Раз, раз, one, one, two, one, one, раз, one. Меня слышно? Меня слышно? Микрофон, да? Окей. Макс, раз, два. Ух, ты хорошо здесь. One, two, three, one, two, three, one, 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 one. Да, Макс просит. One, 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 two. It's okay. One, 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 two, one. Вот это тише. Вот это тише работает. One, 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 one.
Dear friends, we're gonna start. Some people come a little bit too late, but we cannot wait anymore. That's why we're gonna start. I would like to say thank you for everybody who has been here, who came for this event. Welcome to the screening of the documentary MH17 Call for Justice. This documentary that has no chance to be broadcasted on the Dutch television. On obvious reason. The documentary that touched the open wound of every Dutch citizen about the tragedy that after 5 years leaves us with more questions than answers. That's why we found it important not only to watch the film, but also talk about it and about we actually know about their MH17. We do hope that we can communicate with respect and tolerance towards the next of kin and also to those we possible do not agree with. Their event will be in English. To able you ask your burning questions to the one of the makers of the documentary. If you need help with translation, we shall do our best to assist you. In order to understand the geopolitical situation around Ukraine, we have invited Professor Kees van der Pijl to provide us with some background information. He has followed early events in Ukraine from 2013 and 2014, which led to tragedy and wrote a very insightful analysis of the Ukrainian events. His book is recommended to reading to everyone who is interested in the subject. Please give you warm welcome to Mr. van der Pijl. I will show the book. You can order it bol.com, in the boekenhandel, in the shop. Yeah. Also in Russian language. Yes. And in English. Yes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Natalia. Yeah, I'm always in favor, of course, of massive sales of this book. But more importantly, I'm very honored to be able to introduce the documentary that you're going to see about how the tragedy has been followed up by preparations for a trial on the culprits. And the interesting thing, of course, is that it was already decided in the first hours after the news of the downing came in, who had done it. And that conclusion that was drawn before any serious investigation had been undertaken has remained the lodestar for everything that followed. The documentary has been made by Jana Jelashova, who's here straight from Moscow, and by my friend Max van der Werf, who is in the Philippines and who didn't make it in time. I think it's a fantastic document, and I share the spirit of this document, because both in the film and in my book, we don't make pertinent statements about what happened. You know, the film is about how people in Malaysia especially have responded, how people on the ground have responded, and my book is about the context, the geopolitical context, from which you can draw a lot of preliminary conclusions, although you can never be sure. We're talking about a terrible tragedy, a human tragedy, not just for the people who were in the plane who found a death that is impossible to fully take in, but also for the people in Ukraine, where something like 13,000 people have died already and millions have been displaced. And the origin of that is pretty clear. There's no doubt about what has been the driving force of this tragedy, both the large one in Ukraine and the smaller one in the plane that was downed on 17 July. Also, I should mention that the people who are organizing this event are people who have been related in one way or another to another tragedy that happened in 2014, and that was the massacre of people opposed to the nationalist coup that had been taken place in February, and they were massacred on 2 May by a fire in the trade union building in which they had sought refuge. Now, as I said, the driving force of this whole event is clear. It is the Western policy that was followed after the collapse of the Soviet Union. And instead of seeking a European peace deal, which would have ended the Cold War forever and would have created secure conditions in the whole of Europe, the West chose to interpret the collapse of the Soviet Union as a victory for our type of society, our organizations. And that is what happened since. Today, NATO has been expanded to even inside the former Soviet Union, just as the EU, the European Union, which was actually in a race with NATO to see how far they could get in the East, has reached a slightly different group of countries. It seemed at one point that the Black Sea was about to be a NATO inland sea, because all the countries around it would have been members. In 2008, George W. Bush, not the brightest, of course, as we all know, offered to Ukraine and to Georgia to become members of NATO. And it was only thanks to France and Germany that offer was not really made, because they said we first have to wait how events pan out. Now, Vladimir Putin, the much despised president of Russia, and he is despised because after the Yeltsin years, which was like a big fire sale of everything that was worth anything in Russia, Putin tried at least to restore an element of order, a directive state, and some form of state-monitored capitalism in Russia. He had warned in 2007 that the West should stop provoking Russia on its borders and even inside the former Soviet Union. And it's in that context that you have to realize that the coup in 2014, which was engineered on the back of popular demonstrations against oligarchic enrichments in Ukraine, that the coup occurred. And the coup, as I describe in detail in the book, from hour to hour almost, was directed from by the American embassy and by Victoria Nuland, who was then Undersecretary of State in the American administration, the Obama administration, by the way. There's no point in continuing the story here. As I said, the outcome of the coup was that large parts of Ukraine, which since 1922 had been a bilingual and a binational formation, and which would always have been in trouble once it would become an independent state, according to the Western model, you know, a nation state with one language, one people, etc., state was fractured, broken up into several parts, mainly between the Russian-speaking and the Ukrainian-speaking population. And it was obvious that a coup, in which Ukrainian ultra-nationalists and actual fascists, not even neo-fascists, but real fascists with a background in the Second World War experience, when they took power, that large parts of Ukraine would try to resist that. And the massacre in Odessa was one consequence. The separation of Crimea and its reincorporation into Russia was one consequence. And the fight in the Donbass was one consequence. As has just been found out, 2 days before MH17 was shot down, either by a plane or by a missile, I don't know, although I think a jet fighter is the most likely explanation. People on the ground actually noted that for the first time civilian jetliners were flying over the war zone. And people on the ground were heard to be saying that these are daredevils who apparently are risking their lives for that overflight. That is one of the new things that have come out on this topic. I think the documentary speaks for itself. It's a beautiful product in my view. The maker has already, Jana in this case, has already made, if I'm not mistaken, 3 documentaries on the topic. This is number 3, and I hope you will be able to see the integrity that is at the basis of the documentary. There are no bold statements, there are no accusations, there are simply a recording of the obvious fact. And I hate to say that, you know, my book hasn't come out in the Netherlands. It doesn't exist here except in bookshops and with people who are interested in these matters. But here again you see that we are living in a bubble, because I've been, for the translations, I've been to Berlin, I've been to Moscow and to other places, even to Kuala Lumpur, where they organized a conference in August on this topic. And I can tell you, here in Holland, we live in a bubble. We think that the NATO story, the official Dutch government story, the mainstream media story is the truth and nothing but the truth. But in the countries around us, I can tell you, there's much more doubt, just as there's doubt, I guess, among the people here. Thank you very much. Enjoy looking at the documentary, and congratulations again to the makers of this fantastic product. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. van der Paal. I would like to give a microphone for director of this film, Mrs. Jana Yerlashova, and she can talk about film. Yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Well, I'm not going to talk about the documentary. We're going to watch it in a few minutes. I just want to say a few words. I'm very grateful to the platform, to Global Rights of Peaceful People, for organizing this event. And I am very grateful for all of you for coming. I know we're living in a very weird, difficult times when there is no much place for truth, really, but more of who is better in the information wars. So between all these massive, flows of information, it's very hard to see real thing. My only wish for you is, please, no matter what position you take in this, please try to watch this documentary as if you're a tabula rasa, without any prejudice on either one side or another side. And after you watch it, you're welcome with any questions. We'll have a discussion. Thank you. very early there in Europe, yeah. And we're already in Mahathir's hometown, Alor Setar. Yeah, that's where we're gonna have interview with him. I spoke with Mohammed Mahathir for the first time on the topic of the downed Malaysian Boeing 4 years ago. At the time, he was the opposition leader and stated that unlike the West, he doesn't see Russia's guilt in this tragedy. But now he's the leader of the country. And in the MH17 case, new details have appeared. So what will he tell me today, shortly before the 5th anniversary? Salam Tun Mahathir, apa kabar? My investigative partner Max van der Werf is sure the Prime Minister will be diplomatic and will say nothing out of the ordinary. The Netherlands and Australia, they formally stated that Russia is responsible for the shooting of MH17.
They are not really looking at the causes of the crash and who was responsible, but already they have decided that it must be Russia. We cannot accept that kind of attitude.
Malaysian investigative team were not allowed to become a full member of GIT for the first 6 months, I think. Do you know why?
This is unfair and unusual. The plane is ours, and there were Malaysians flying in the plane. They also died. So it's natural that Malaysia should be the first country that should be involved in the investigation. But they insist. Well, they didn't insist. They just ignored us, took the black box, and carried out their own investigation.
Yes, Jana, here is the building of the Joint Investigation Team in Rotterdam. You know, I tried very hard, sent emails for a request for an interview with Mr. Westerbeke, with other people, with representatives. They're all rejected to talk to us. They don't want to answer questions. They don't give interviews at the moment. So we have 000. Nobody is interested to talk about it.
I told Jana that it was all in vain. I have already written the Joint Investigation Team more than 10 times. The answer is always the same. We will not give you an interview. We will not answer your questions.
Max, but the head of JIT gave an interview to the Russian Novaya Gazeta.
Now, of course, that's the liberal newspaper sponsored by the Dutch government.
Right.
I can't wait to see the important material that Jana brought from Malaysia. But while we are heading to the hotel, we are recalling how it was and how it all started 5 years ago at the beginning of our investigation.
I interviewed a lawyer who called on the Dutch Prime Minister to transfer the MH17 case to an independent investigation at the UN.
I'm not afraid from no one, so I took the risk. I urged the Prime Minister. I hold them liable.
Because 3 months passed and the Dutch had not even taken the debris from the crash site.
But Mr. van der Hoorn was pressured to abandon his idea. I came to get comments from the lawyer, but instead of him, there were two strangers in the apartment. I asked Mr. van der Go if he could comment on him being pressured.
Already told
But you told Mr. van der Go not to come, right?
That's true.
That's true.
That's absolutely
and you
true.
tell me that he's not coming, but you want to talk to me, right?
Absolutely.
They suggested to make a deal and strongly recommended not to use the first interview with a lawyer.
I'm interested in you because I know what you can do. I don't know. But if you work together, you always find things, you have contacts, you say this and that. That's how you help each other in the case that you want to build.
I decided to call this Ed Senke to clarify the situation, but without any success. We haven't been able to reach the lawyer ever since either. Hopefully everything is okay with him. While
the Dutch investigation was becoming more secretive, the Malaysian side was doing a very important job, collecting the black boxes from the conflict area in Ukraine where the plane crashed. Colonel Sakri and his team were in Kyiv the very next day after the tragedy, and after 2 days already at the crash site. But it's not as easy as it sounds.
I talked to my Prime Minister, and he directed me to go to crash sites immediately. I said, we have not allowed to go there until the such that permission from the Ukraine government. So I take a small team to leave Kharkiv, going to Donetsk secretly. So that was the mission that I have had to do it. Because why? We cannot afford to wait. Mr. Borodai was the head of the separatists. The rebel was waiting for us. And my conversation with the Mr. Borodai, they said, why are you so late? That was the, sometimes got, I think, very funny.
Our sincere appreciation to His Excellency.
Я выражаю искреннюю признательность его превосходительству господину Бородаю
for giving us the opportunity
за то, что он дал нам возможность
and attain our request.
At the rebel side was so welcome, and at the Ukraine side was so tense in terms of the situations. That was a blessing from Mr. Borodai to Malaysia.
So no conditions?
No, there is no condition at all.
Malaysian experts have certified that they were not tampered with.
Well, to manage that ballot box is not that easy. I was requested by the OSCE. They want the black box to be given to them in Kharkiv railway station. I was entered by the FBI. They approached me to show them the black box. I said no. At Kiev, against the Ukraine government's forcing us to leave the black box to them. We said no, we cannot allow. And we are going to bring this black box to Fambaros. I cannot understand why must Ukraine involved with the in the investigation. But I do not know why Malaysia was not involved.
Okay. Excluding one of the main aspects in this tragedy, which is the operator, Malaysia, yeah. From the investigation, it's against the rules. So if somebody in such a historical accident decide to violate so bluntly the law, the conclusion can only be they have something in mind. At least the result of this investigation team must be doubted because it is not the result of an objective investigation. Somebody was missing.
A terror attack. MH17 was flying from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur when a Russian-made missile blew the plane apart.
This is the work of Russian separatists.
And President Obama tonight is confident this plane was brought down by separatists supported by Russia.
They could say conflict zone, but they use this type of words. Instead of saying a missile operated by both sides, a common weapon, they say Russian manufactured book missile. And they leave out that the serial number is a missile that was in Ukraine's possession.
And a Russian-made missile blew the plane apart.
When you read something like that, you will feel somehow Russia is involved, even though it's a totally different issue. It's a political issue, it's a territorial issue, but now you'll feel, oh, Russia supplied this weapon, they used it, it's out of control, it's their fault. That's the impression you get.
Yeah, this is all world politics lah. Boys, the bigger country, we are stronger, politically influenced in the world.
Unluckily, they don't involve us in their investigation.
There's a big wall in front of us, that's stopping us from getting that next information.
We need somebody to go and investigate properly and see what is actually went wrong. This is human life, so they should try not to use politics or any political influence.
If you had a chance to ask Mr. Westerbeek, head of JIT, any question, what would you ask?
Why did the West insist on us handing over the materials there? We could have conducted the investigation here. We could have conducted it in a very transparent manner. If you really want to show you're unbiased, hold it in a neutral country.
It's been shot down, somebody have to take the blame, There must be a scapegoat, So who's going to take the blame?
Wie denkt u dat het toestel heeft neergehakt?
Rusland nog
Rusland,
niet.
ik denk dat ook wel, ja.
De Russen. Ja. Vrij zeker.
There was a thing from Russian, a rocket launcher, right?
Je hoorde de John Kerry, je hoorde Mark Rutte, je hoorde Hillary Clinton, Obama. Je hoorde alleen maar Rusland, Rusland. Als je in zo'n verwerkingsproces zit, dan word je die kant automatisch opgeduwd. Dus ik kreeg een eigen woede die ik niet kon. Dat mijn eerste gedachte was, ik ga erheen.
That day, Willem Grootscholte flew to Bali, where he had met the love of his life. He was happy. His best friend Ron already had a hard time saying goodbye to his buddy, just to learn a few hours later that he had lost Willem forever.
Je beseft het helemaal niet. Ik heb gehuild. Mijn dochtertje had mij voor het eerst zien huilen. Het was gewoon een echte vriendschap. We waren ook echt oprecht eerlijk tegen elkaar. Met scheldpartijen, met emoties, met huilen. Maar het was meer familie als vriend. Het is de eerste keer dat ik hier ben en het roept heel veel emoties op. Woede, onbegrip, onrust. Ik vind het monument mooi, ik ben blij dat ik er ben. Het is voor mij nog steeds een aardsbegrip dat het nog niet afgesloten is. Ik kan het nog niet afsluiten. Dus het is voor mij nog steeds belangrijk wie het gedaan heeft. Ik wil mij niet ergens naartoe laten duwen.
The wreckage of MH17 was still burning when the Ukrainian security service already posted phone taps online as proof that the rebels are guilty.
Только что сбили самолет, группа минера за Янакиева упал.
Летчики, где летчики?
Поехали искать и фотографировать сбитый самолет.
Короче, стопудово гражданский борт.
Het Openbaar Ministerie verdenkt de 4 genoemde verdachten ervan dat zij nauw hebben samengewerkt om de Buk-Telar te krijgen en in stelling te brengen op de afvuurlocatie met als doel een vliegtuig neer te schieten. Informatiebijeenkomst voor alle nabestaanden.
One of the few things that the official investigation doesn't hide is that they accept SBU phone taps as evidence.
Joost Niemeller, mijn vraag is, wat is de bron van de tapverslagen?
Dat zijn vooral tapgesprekken van de Oekraïense dienst.
Voornamelijk, zijn er ook nog andere bronnen?
Nee, het is tapgesprekken uit Oekraïne, om het nog even simpel te zeggen. Ja.
Записи, которые опубликовала СБУ, они утверждают, что это было 17 июля разговоры. Это правда?
Ну, по крайней мере, разговор с боцманом, который, я говорю о том, что мы сбили Су-25, я нахожусь в Степановке. Этот разговор состоялся ранее, 16-го, а с утра 17-го я находился уже в Донецке.
А как-то это можно проверить?
Ну, естественно, это может подтвердить Великая Украинская СБУ, у которых есть биллинг моего телефона.
То есть разговор, который они выложили, голос там ваш, я правильно понимаю?
Да, голос мой.
Голос ваш, разговор был, но был не в ту дату. Что еще?
Ну, они перекроили все.
Listening to Dubinsky, I was thinking about important information that I had already obtained about the first phone taps published by the SBU on the day of the tragedy.
Hi. Hi, Akash. Diana. Hi.
I'm Navid.
In Malaysia, we found certified audio experts who prepare reports for court cases. They verified the authenticity of the phone taps for us.
This is left channel, right channel, they are just totally different. I can see there is a difference of the noise, and I also can see they are basically some kind of merging of an audio.
This is edited.
Yes, it's edited.
That's clear.
Yes.
How is it clear?
So look at the noise level, right? The noise level is different from this audio track. If you see this audio track, the noise level at this area, they're different. And this is lower, and this is higher.
Which means that this part of the conversation is compiled of different parts of different conversations.
Yes, it's a merging of different audio. Yes.
Merging of
This two are same sound. You can hear? So suddenly he added this particular word here probably to hide something to make the length. And here you can see so many cut. This is clear.
Oh, these are cuts, yeah?
Yeah, you can see. Missing audio. What is this conversation? It could be there's some conversation here, they just cut it, and then just leave the last part.
Yeah.
You can see that.
It looks the strangest,
Yeah.
you know, like
you see.
so different.
Yeah, it clearly shows that these are two different recordings.
These experts prepared for us a detailed 143-page report about these phone taps.
Voornamelijk zijn er ook nog andere bronnen?
Nee, het is tapgesprekken uit Oekraïne, om het nog even simpel te zeggen. Ja.
The SBU will provide 20 different phone taps for the prosecution team. And okay, the one that was tampered in the very first, yeah, they cheated, okay, but it's not part of the evidence. So the other 20 you can trust because we checked it and we couldn't find no mistakes. Let's say that's what the prosecution team says, then...
No, this is not the way it works. You know the saying, and the saying is true, on any objective procedure, the person who lies once lies always. So if somebody lies, obviously lies, has bad intention.
Does it make the whole phone tap evidence from SBU worthless, or is that too strong an indicator?
Maybe not completely worthless, but a judge would very, very suspiciously look into these things. And if he has the slightest doubt, then he would say, well, to be on the safe side, I don't believe.
Как вы узнали о падении Боинга и что после этого последовало?
О падении Боинга я узнал от премьер-министра Александра Юрьевича Бородая вечером того же дня, в районе 23 часов, вот мое оцепление привезло мне 2 черных ящика. Я эти черные ящики не вскрытые, не поврежденные отвез премьер-министру.
Что, даже мысли не было как-то их припрятать?
А зачем? Прячет тот, кто виноват, что там. Ни я, ни мои подчиненные никакого отношения к тому, что сбили пассажирский самолет, не имеем. Мало того, ни я, ни мои подчиненные ни от кого не получали каких-то приказов.
А что тогда делать с переговорами с перехваченными СБЮ? Как вы прокомментируете записи?
Да очень просто прокомментировать. Пусть они выложат полную версию переговоров, и там будет видно, о чем, собственно, говорится.
The idea to verify the authenticity of the SBU phone taps came from our friend, independent German journalist Billy Six. He already addressed this issue with a German audio expert 3 years ago.
Also ich habe insgesamt 9 Manipulationen festgestellt. Es gibt sehr, sehr viel Spielraum, wo man sagen könnte, also da hätte man so viel drehen, schrauben und verändern können. Und ich zweifle die Authentizität dieser Aufnahmen an.
Billy was also at the crash site, looking for bug witnesses and other evidence.
When I was invited there as a witness to speak to the GIT, it didn't end very good between us, because my impression was that this kind of investigation doesn't try to discover the truth.
You used electron microscope to check alien fragments for metal remnants and glass remnants. How many impact holes in the wreckage itself did you check with such kind of electron microscope?
Nee, zo'n specifieke informatie is hier niet bekend. Dus dat zouden we na moeten vragen, maar hier kan ik die vraag niet beantwoorden.
And I also wrote them emails and never ever got any kind of answer to the question, however I asked it.
The attitude of the Dutch investigation towards the wreckage startled me from the very beginning. It took them 4 months to come collect parts of the plane for the first time. But a lot of the debris was still left behind. A year after the tragedy, locals showed us quite big and similarly important parts of the wreckage, part of the cockpit. We were also quite shocked that the local mayor refused to take them over.
Зачем вот эту сенсацию делать? Мне она не надо вот это. Не надо. Я не хочу такой сенсации.
Dutch journalist who accompanied the mayor didn't seem to be interested in the wreckage either. We had more luck with the head of a nearby village. She accepted the parts without any problem and promised to hand them over to the Dutch. Soon after the scandal with the wreckage, the mayor was removed from his office. These parts of the plane are in the Netherlands for a long time now, but they have never been placed on the layout of MH17. And 5 years on, we keep finding new ones.
Тяжелый. Как вы нашли части самолета?
Случайно в бурьянах наткнулся, заблестела тут часть какая-то. Потом мы его погрузили с хлопцами, и чтобы убрать его, что надо было убрать, оно мешало.
We handed over these parts to the administration of Petropavlovka, just like the last time. У нас есть часть Боинга.
Ого, а куда ж мы его будем ложить? Какой он большой.
But let's go back to the official investigation. They presented a reconstruction of the route the book took to the launch site based on photos and videos from social media.
This image appeared on the internet shortly after the crash of MH17. The JIT used it as evidence that the rebels transported the launcher exactly on the 17th of July 2014.
One of the experts in our team noticed an interesting detail in the photo, the silhouette of a man in the window of the building opposite the parking lot.
We found this man and talked to him.
Я узнал свой силуэт. Здесь еще была другая москитная сетка. Но это событие произошло не 17-го, а накануне, за день или за два. Это два события мною разнесены во времени, это однозначно. То есть проезд вот этой техники, если это техника, и событие Грабова, ну в смысле падение самолета, это в разные дни произошло. У меня просто привычка реагировать на все.
Да?
Супруга по окнам не бегает, а мне было как бы интересно.
So the date doesn't seem to be the same as the investigation claims.
Let's check the official launch site now.
This is rebel territory. According to the JIT, this is where the Russian book was placed.
And here is the village where Valentina Kovalenko lives, the star witness of the book missile in the BBC documentary.
Начнем с того, что это замок даже не наш.
Замок не ваш?
Нет.
Вообще не ваш?
Mm-mm.
А это где? Это же не Красный
Понятия
Октябрь.
не имею. Это вообще... Нет, двор наш. Церковь в Ремовке у нас шикарная церковь. Это
вообще не оттуда.
Не оттуда.
It is highly likely that attention to detail and accuracy are not the strongest sides of BBC correspondents.
Therefore, we decided to help them and convey Valentina's story in more detail.
Ну, мы с девками копали картошку. Такой взрыв. Я что-то глянула в небо. Первая мысль была, почему сбитый самолет летит вверх, а не вниз падает. У него сзади как огонь.
Откуда ракета вылетела?
Ну, где-то с этого района.
А что у нас там за район?
Степановка.
Степановка – это какая, чья территория?
Ну, тогда там укропы были в тот момент. Ну, я здесь стояла,
Может быть,
получается,
туда
вот здесь.
ушел?
Не, он прямо так шел.
Вот так, на зените,
да.
туда.
Ну, практически над нами пролетела.
На официальная версия, ракет стартовал отсюда, 2 километра отсюда.
Мне ж сзади глаз нету, я ж спиной стояла. Когда мы услышали хлопок, повернулись, она уже летела.
Понятно. The more we looked for the bug and its missile, the more confused we got.
Our findings did not match the official version. Different dates, different evidence, different direction of the missile.
Maybe even a different type of missile.
So what do we know for sure after these 5 years?
2 военных летело. Мы смотрим в небо пассажирские, начали их обстреливать, и они поднялись прямо под пассажирский. Мы еще ругали, говорю, неужели нельзя отменить рейсы эти?
This happened some days before the crash, but what was it like that very day?
Военный самолет пролетел вот, в поле зрения, пролетел, взял восточнее и ушел.
100% был военный самолет, 100%. Вот ровно вот здесь был маленький серебряный военный был самолет. Вот ровно вот здесь. Это не только я видел.
Хлопок был, пуск ракеты, это очевидно было. Просто я в ракетных войсках служил. Понятия имею, что такое бук и что такое ракета с самолета.
Спрячется, это уйдет, и звук уходит в ту сторону, в торец. Потом возвращается опять сюда. Он кружил, несколько кругов сделал. И вот он выпустил и сразу туда улетел.
Everybody is so convinced the official narrative cannot even be questioned. And what really struck me was one of these statements made by a JET representative. He said something like the area where the plane came down is too dangerous in order to do any serious investigation. That JET told something which was not true. After that, I decided to dive in a little bit more deeper into the investigation.
To check his doubts, Stefan went to the crash site himself. In Donetsk, he was able to interview a military air traffic controller of the Ukrainian armed forces, who said that Kiev had misinformed the investigation about the military radar not working on the day of the crash.
Они все работали.
Все работало.
Все находились в полной боевой готовности.
Говорят, что там делали ремонт 17 июля.
Она ж не одна. Их там 3 штуки.
Именно на Чугуев.
Да, там резервные станции, которые оттуда вылетала боевая авиация.
Значит, что эти здания этого дня есть?
Есть они. В Украине они есть.
The Ukrainian government was fully aware of this danger. We have no indications that they warned anybody. So they obviously exposed the civilian aircraft to a real lethal danger. In this case, the organization, Ukrainian government, who leads the investigation, could also be responsible for the crash by not closing the airspace.
We are interested in the rule of law, in justice for everyone, irrespective of who is involved. We have to know who actually fired the missile, and then only we can accept the report as a complete truth.
Freight floor.
Okay, guys, now it's the time to ask questions, if you have any. I will deliver the microphone to everyone who wants to ask something.
Praten we Nederlands hier? English. Okay. I studied a little myself, the whole development, but I have still some questions. What happened to the black boxes?
Can you hear me? Oh yeah, I think. Thank you for the question. I thought it was clear from the documentary. Colonel Sakri actually says they recovered black boxes. They brought it to Kiev, and from Kiev they brought it to Farnborough, to England, yeah, where the analysis was made. Malaysians never got any copy of raw data of the black boxes. They do not have it. I don't think it's a question you should ask me. I don't know. I mean, the British, they issued a report on the black boxes, but it took them 2 months, I think, to...
The law, it's like that man said, that if you have this kind of equipment, which is used to explain an accident in the air. Yeah? So it's an illegal action to take this away in non-authority hands. You understand what I'm saying?
Illegal in what sense? What do you mean?
It disappeared. I mean, this is proof of the chicken of all.
I was at a conference in Kuala Lumpur, and you saw the Malaysian colonel who went with his team to collect the black boxes. And he was very courageous, saying no to the FBI guys who wanted black boxes from him. But after that, Malaysia apparently was put under pressure to allow the black boxes to be flown to Farnborough in England. And sorry? They have surrendered their own evidence. Yes, that's true. Instead of, because there are other possibilities. And interestingly, at the conference in Kuala Lumpur, this colonel was also taking part. And every time when he was asked by the audience about what exactly happened to the black boxes, another gentleman from the audience, who was a top civil servant from Malaysia, stepped forward and took over from the colonel. And that happened twice. I don't want to create a sort of conspiratorial sphere here, but it's very important to see that the colonel was not allowed to finish his story about what happened to the black boxes.
Well, to be fair, that other person, Asharuddin, he was part of DSB. He was the one who took the black boxes from Kiev to Farnborough. And he said that they were allowed. They were present next day. They were allowed to listen to the last few minutes of what was on the record. So, but they were never given, and he confirmed that they were never given any raw data of either of these two black boxes. So that's
it's an illegal action. Yes.
Illegal. I mean, when you say illegal, what do you mean by that? It was agreed.
On aviation, okay. And the black boxes do not serve the purpose of finding criminals. They serve the purpose of what caused the crash.
Okay, so.
And that should be public information.
But it was. There was a report published.
There are international agreements and treaties that have to do with aviation, and they are very, very strict on these things normally. On this case, we had to wait for I don't know how long.
Well, I would agree with you here that it took really a long time for them to issue a report, and basically it was nothing. It ended abruptly. That's what took them 2 months to investigate. But I don't see how illegal it is. I don't know if they really they're obliged to provide raw data to the carrier. Well, it sounds to me that.
National Criminal Court in The Hague. They should be responsible for that.
For who should be responsible?
International Criminal. I don't know whether I'm wrong, but this is a human rights issue, international. Yeah.
Well, I can comment only on the situation as it is. Malaysians do not, unlike some people that reported that Malaysians do have data, the black box data, they do not have the black box data.
What I'm getting at is there no legal action possible against the governments?
No, because in the end, the materials were presented.
Yep.
Except that it was very late.
Okay, thank you. Another
Thank
question,
you.
please?
I have a question regarding the tape, the conversation that was made public, I think on the first day or the second day of this conversation between people from Donetsk saying, we shut down, and then you went to analyze.
Phone taps.
Yeah, to see, and they said it was manipulated and it was not true, it was fake. Has there been any reaction from the government on this? The Dutch
Which government?
Dutch government.
Not that we know of.
So
no, I don't think
was
so.
Was it presented as evidence? Was it presented as evidence to the
No,
joint
these,
investigation team?
no. This exact conversation that was put on YouTube on the official SBU channel. I believe about 5 hours after the crash, it was already there.
5 hours.
Implying that it was the rebels who did it. That was never, it is not part of the official investigations, but there are some other 20 or something other conversations that JIT accepts as a legitimate evidence. But our point was that if the first one was manipulated, and it's quite obvious that it was, because a few experts, and really good experts, Akash Rosen is a certified expert who takes part in courts against criminal charges, investigations. So there is no really reason to doubt his expertise. So we know that those tapes were manipulated in a few ways, not only cutting, but also adding of some things, etc. So we don't know what's on the other tapes that were presented to GIT, but at the same time, it does raise question.
But to continue on this for a moment, if this is manipulated, doctored, this tape, you don't do that in 2 or 3 or 4 hours. It takes some time.
Well,
Then
Secret
it means,
Service...
Then it means, it's almost certain then, that it means that everything was pre-programmed.
I wouldn't go as far as to say that. I mean,
you don't produce that in 4 hours, that tape.
It's possible. We've talked to different experts, and to audio experts, actually Akash, this audio expert who did this analysis for us, he confirmed that it is quite possible to do it because they have so many, phone taps. Hundreds and thousands. It's not, well, he said it's possible, again. And please, I really ask you, let's not go into speculations. There are facts that we can talk about, so why talk about speculations, If we have evidence for this, we talk about this. But I'm telling you, I don't know if it was the case or it was not the case, but it is possible to produce such kind of tape in 4 hours. It is possible. So even if, it was not as you said, it was possible. The main thing is that it was tempered, and they did post it, while the debris was still burning. They were accusing and using these doctored tapes as evidence. Again, we can speculate why they did it, or not speculate, but I think it does raise question, why would they do that? If it's so obvious that it was, rebels or Russian military that did it. That's the point to go from.
Well, I think
2 days before the crash? I think Bellingcat was created 2 days before the crash. I mean, when did they have time to go to Ukraine? And I don't know this.
Guys, can you ask you to talk only with the mic, because there is a live streaming to everywhere in the world, and otherwise the public cannot hear you.
Right, they can hear only me.
Yes,
but
exactly.
That would be good, if they hear you too.
Thank you.
But anyway, thank you for your question.
Gregory Zhigolov, RFRL. I have a follow-up question on this topic. As far as I understand, you do not have proof that the tape or this recording you were investigating is actually the same tape or the same recording that is used in the official investigation, right? Maybe it's just a shortened version which was published on YouTube, and the official investigation has the full tape, right? So what is that? How can you prove that this shortened version is proving that something was staged?
What do you mean? It's not a version. It was not accepted by GIT at all. So there are different conversations that are part of the investigation, but the source is the same, you know? And if this source, which is SBU, a few hours after the crash, provides a doctored tape playing with, influencing people's minds, you know, I know, that makes me wonder. It doesn't make you wonder, why would they do that?
It's also not a matter of a single tape that has been tampered with. You have to combine it with a number of other facts. For instance, things that we know, that are not a matter of speculation. For instance, when Ukraine asked for a veto, so that they would have a say in anything that would come to the outside world, the Ukrainian press agency, Union, commented that this was definite proof of the guilt of Ukraine. And they were very dissatisfied with the step of Ukraine, because they said, why would Ukraine ask for a veto if they have anything to hide? You know, so you have to combine all these different facts. Some are stronger, some are weaker, some we know for sure, some we speculate on. In combination, it creates an atmosphere of complete untrustworthiness of what has come out of the Kiev regime on this matter.
Just one more very short. So sure. That recording is not from the official investigation, right?
Sorry?
That recording, voice recording, you
That's
were investigating.
the first recording that appeared on YouTube, SBU. It's in YouTube, yes. It is not part of official, of the wiretaps, the phone taps of the that were provided by SBU to GIT. But as a lawyer, aviation lawyer, explained that in court there will be real doubts, because if one conversation is tempered, how do you know that the rest 20 that are provided and part of the official investigation are not tampered with? The thing is, why we are here and asking so many questions and having very few answers, probably because the official investigation is so secret. I mean, it's so not transparent. We wouldn't be here sitting with you and talking about first conversation, second conversation provided by SBU if it was, you know, a well transparent information. But we don't see it. If you ask me, for me, the conclusions of GIT that they presented, it's more of a speculation than a real real proof of something. All we see is a few pictures taken from social media, some conversations that they use as evidence, but we already know that the first conversation was tampered with. So as much as I want to know the truth, I'm sure you want to know the truth. It's not about convicting somebody. It's about really knowing the truth. I don't see it happening. I think it's very premature what we have, but it is really unbelievable that 5 years on, 5 years later, we have such a, incomplete report from official investigation. That's my, that's my main worry.
On which a trial will be based in a few months' time. You know, in March 2020, there will be a trial on the basis of this extremely incomplete evidence, which has been attacked from all sides. And therefore, it's very important to show which elements in the evidence that has been produced so far is faulty. And it's not we don't know what the JIT may have in behind its back, and they will only show when it gets to the trial. But at the moment, the trial is obviously aimed at blaming Russia, which is also why Surkov, who is in the Kremlin and the highest placed person who is involved in this matter and who has been accused, why he has been made part of the number of people who have been accused of murder. And at the last press conference, there was one question by a guy from Window on Russia, RAM of Rusland, which is a propaganda institute that has been set up by the Dutch government to blame the Russians for this and to achieve or to help with possible regime change. the guy of that organization actually asked at the press conference, doesn't the fact that Surkov is now accused of murder point directly to the inner circle of Putin in the Kremlin? And I think an event like that and a question like that gives you a sense, and this was all on account of one telephone conversation in which somebody from the rebels asked of Surkov, can you help us? And he said, no, you'll have to figure it out yourself. Now, to take that as the basis for a murder accusation, showing somebody's face without hiding his eyes and that so on and so forth, shows the weakness of the case that the JIT currently represents.
Thank you.
Another question here.
Robert Zak from Raptor TV, Czech Republic. Jana, I have a question. Did you feel any kind of danger because of making of this film?
Danger from who?
From anybody. Or anything.
You
don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, it's okay. No. I mean, people keep telling me that I should be afraid of something, but no, so far everything is okay. I didn't feel danger, neither did Max, I think. We had a lot of obstacles making this documentary. It was really hard to do, starting from the very beginning, from crowdfunding and stuff, so financially, and then getting all the exclusive interviews, because we had no help whatsoever from anybody. I can even tell you a story how we tried to organize an interview with Prime Minister Mahathir with the help of Russian embassy in Kuala Lumpur. We asked them for a letter of recommendation, because we're not some fancy channel, we're independent journalists, our new platform, nobody knows us. I mean, I met with Mahathir 4 years ago, but still. We asked them for this little favor, and they were reluctant to provide us even with letter of recommendation. So I don't know. Maybe because, I don't know why, seriously. So we had to use other sources. My great producer in Malaysia made it happen for us, but we were not sure till the very last moment that it's gonna happen, but it did happen. So, yeah, and every little step, it was kind of like that. We never knew what we're gonna end up with, so.
Now, another question, but a little bit similar way. Do you know about any witnesses? Because I know that there was one witness, the lady was saying that she saw a missile coming from Stepanovka. Do you know anything about the witnesses? Did they have any problems that there was in the film? Or anybody else who was helping, for example? If I can make a wider question.
That's a good question. That Alexander guy who you saw, he was a witness of this heavy equipment passing by his house, but not the same day, not the same date, not the same time. I think I had to spend well, at least an hour talking to him twice, before he agreed to an interview. People are afraid, of course. They are scared because they don't know, which way it will go. Tomorrow, they become part of, they return, as you say, to Ukraine, and they are afraid that there are going to be some measures against them. But we are very grateful to every courageous people who talked to us and agreed to go on camera. You see, that's our principle. We do not use anonymous witnesses. We have so many testimonies off the camera. And you would have learned much more information, but these people, they don't want to go on camera. And I'm grateful to Alexander, he finally did. But then, a few days later, Tsimach was kidnapped. And we were going to have another interview with a person who was on Saur Magila and who witnessed, he could have told us about this if there was this plume. from the book, if they were fighter jets. It was a fighter fighting on Sour Mogila with very, broad, vast view of the whole territory. So they definitely saw and know, what was going on. He initially agreed to an interview, but then after the kidnapping, we got only refusals because people are afraid. I mean, if in the daylight you get kidnapped and brought to SBU, I'm sorry, but I made another documentary about conflict in Ukraine called Facing the War, and we talked to people who were tortured by SBU. That's not a good sight. So people are afraid. But hopefully everything is okay with people that are in our documentary. I haven't heard any, bad things happening to them. So if that answers your question,
thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a question for Jana maybe, or Kees van der Pijl. I have a question about the tapes that were published by the NOS news broadcaster the same night of the event, of the accident. It showed like separatists talking about the plane they shot down, or somebody shot down and they shot an Su-25, and somebody else shot down the plane. Actually, that's not what they published. They published like, it's a passenger plane. No? These tapes, are they used as material for by the JIT? The tapes, the recordings of separatists talking with each other about the downed plane, that they arrive at the wreckage and they talk about the wreckage and they see that's a passenger plane and the parrots and the stewardesses, they talk about that. A few sentences from this conversation was published by NOS at the night of the catastrophe.
So maybe it's better to ask them.
Are these
maybe they know something more than we do.
Oh, really?
They have their sources of information.
Well, it's the whole transcript of this conversation of the two separatists talking with each other was published on an Australian website, and I copied the whole conversation before it disappeared behind a paywall. And I published it on my website. Everybody can see that. Max has it also. It's a very messy conversation. It also looked like doctored already because it doesn't make much sense. But a few of these sentences were broadcasted by the Dutch television. Mm-hmm. And so I wondered, could these tapes be recovered, be found, and see if they are doctored as well?
Oh, you mean analysis of other conversations?
Yeah, the ones that are published by the Dutch TV.
It is possible. I mean, there are quite a few conversations published. But we decided me and Max, we were on the same page during the whole production of the documentary, and it was his idea that we take exactly this one because it's very representative. It's the first one that appeared, and as this man was saying, they had very little time. So it was not a perfect tempering, because they say with the modern equipment, it is possible to make it almost perfect, almost impossible to detect. But Akash Rosen says that actually any tempered, tape can be, detected if it takes place. But the first one is very representative, as I already said. We could analyze other ones, but for one thing, it's quite an expensive thing. Another thing is, as we talked with Max, that all other conversations were provided by SBU to the official investigation 2 months, I think, after the crash. So they had quite some time, to perfect those tapes. I'm not saying, seriously, I'm not saying because I have no proof of it. I'm just giving you the time frame. The ones that we analyzed, it was a few hours after the crash. These other conversations were provided 2 months after. So we went for the first one.
Okay. Can I also add that it's a very weak case if you have to rely for a conviction on tapes, and you have no motive. So it's entirely unclear why the rebels would be interested in downing a passenger plane. These matters can only be solved if you take into account all the different elements of the political situation, of the way the different parties in the conflict behaved after the catastrophe occurred, and so on and so forth. And just a footnote to what Jana said, to what the gentleman asked about, are you afraid? There's one person who has reason to be afraid, and that is her maker of this documentary, is Max van der Werf, because he has just been put on the Wereldvorrads. You're on that list. Oh well, I can't say congratulations, but this is a list on which several people who were put on it were assassinated very soon after. So basically, it's a death list. And I've heard now that the Dutch Trade Union of Journalists and the Free Press Institute are preparing a response to this this listing, which in itself should have required a Dutch government response. You know, if we would have had a proper government acting in this matter properly, the foreign secretary would have called in the Ukrainian ambassador to ask for an explanation why a Dutch citizen is put, and a Russian citizen in this case, on a death list in Ukraine. So there are risks, although we shouldn't overdo it, and we certainly shouldn't change our behavior on account of it.
Yes. First of all, a compliment for the film. It was always good to see another point of view, and it was a bit short for my taste, but yeah, I can continue. I wonder why there were no.
Can you maybe? I don't
yes,
see you.
I would stand up. Yes. Why there are no Dutch politicians invited to the screening, or why there's no members of opposition parties to see these facts?
Not invited. No, I think there were like 500 people invited to this event, and politicians are among them. Another thing is whether they came or not. I don't know. That organizers can.
May I answer this question?
Sure. Yeah.
But I'm sure if you would have a private screening for some opposition MPs, they would, be open to see it, I guess.
Yes,
I
would like to answer this question.
Yes.
I invited more than 500 people from Dutch government. I invited all of mainstream medium, Telegraaf, Volkskrant, NOS, RTL, NRC. Nobody came. I saw one guy there. He came and asked me if somebody from the Dutch government is here. I said no. Where are you from? He said, I am from NRC. I said, welcome. You can make a nice reporter about. He said, no. I would like only to know if someone from the Dutch government is here. Then, afterwards, he said, okay, I know enough, I go away. I asked him, what is your name?
But we have a parliament here, and there's not only MPs who are in the government, there's also opposition parties, like the Socialist Party, Party for Freedom. They might have been interested to be
I
here.
invited all of them.
Okay.
All of them. Yes? Okay. Yeah, I asked his name, he said, doesn't matter.
Because I think this people should see, so the audience should be much larger, because I find it quite interesting. Food for thought.
That's exactly what the case was telling you. We are living in a bubble.
Yeah.
Yeah. And don't forget that the entire parliament, all 150 members, supported the accusation of the JIT of Russia. Basically, the accusation by the Netherlands and Australia. There was not a single parliamentarian who dissented from that. Now, that's very worrying, of course. The good thing is that there is a tendency now in Parliament to also begin to question the role of Ukraine and why they kept open the airspace over the war zone. So that's a little ray of hope that I think is important. But the fact that nobody turned up is not a surprise, because we are now in an ideological climate that you should judge by reference to, for instance, the fate of Julian Assange. You should also think of the fact that in the NRC Handelsblad, our newspaper of record, although I don't use it in that quality, that they use the word treason when it comes to dissenting from the official account of the JIT on the matter of MH17.
That's what was very surprising to me, and honestly, it's very sad, because I heard a few stories of people, a Dutch journalist, who dare to voice a different opinion, and they lose their jobs.
So that's why the rest is not here.
No, that's what I'm saying. That's why I'm so grateful that you showed up, because I was expecting, an empty, place, because I was told that it's not okay even to stand by and, and watch it, because your reputation might be ruined. So you're a very brave people, I'm guessing. I mean, it was a very, it came as a surprise to me too. I mean, we welcome everybody. You don't have to agree with us. You can argue, you can voice your opinion. I mean, if I were in their place, I would have come just out of the curiosity, to see what we've done and to ask questions. There is nothing wrong about that. That was very surprising for me, and quite frankly upsetting, because it means that we are all very divided, and that is very sad, because it's very easy to manipulate us when we are very divided. It is a political case, like any air crash. I mean, we're not delusional, we know it's political, but it's 21st century. We live in the world where, if you want, you can know anything about, everything. And at the same time, 5 years on, there's so little, and so the intransparent, the information is intransparent to us. And the sole intention of this documentary, why we don't talk here about, Russia, because there is no point. Russia is not part of the investigation. I mean, we can talk about how Russian information war, how Russia is weak at information wars. I'm not going to defend here Russia, seriously. They suck at this. But why would I give this time in my documentary if it's counterproductive? It's not about common sense. The primary thing is official investigation. And I don't know if you agree or not, but there are so many facts that it's, I don't know if it's okay to use this word, that it's corrupt.
Oh yes. That's not so difficult in Ukraine, because that is a country which has been taken over by oligarchs, several of whom are real criminals, like Kolomoisky or Akhmetov. These are people who have built their business empires by a series of murders. And they have deposited their money outside of the Netherlands, outside of Ukraine. I was thinking of the Netherlands because Holland is an important deposit of illegal money. We are the one country in the world where you have the most transit of illegal money that's being whitewashed. So Ukraine is corrupt. It has lost 1/4 of its population since the coup in February 2014, especially also from the poorer parts of the West. People are working in Poland and in other places. The street is being governed by armed gangs, and there's even a lot of talk now about Poroshenko. I can't imagine that it will happen, but it's possible, about Poroshenko preparing a new coup against Zelensky with these Nazi groups who are very upset about the fact that this is a Jew who is now president of Ukraine. And the choice of my words indicates that these are the categories in which the political situation in Ukraine is being talked about. So we don't have to, we can't expect anything from these people. We know of the corruption and the torture practices of the SBU, but that's the fact that they still sit in the JIT is a disgrace. But the fact that Malaysia, in fact, has said that they don't support the conclusion of the JIT any longer is a ray of hope. And I think that this also explains why there is now such a rush to get to a trial and to convict 4 Russians who are only marginally connected to the case. And this is political justice, just as it was in the Yugoslavia tribunal, in the Rwanda tribunal, in all the ICC, you know, the criminal court cases in which only Africans were convicted, whereas Bush and Blair walked free after setting the whole Middle East on fire. These are the preparations for another political trial. And that is why I'm proud to work with Hector Reban and Max van der Werf in preparing a dossier that will show why the basis for the trial is actually non-existent. And there's no chance that a proper trial, if we're talking about a state of law, would ever be successful.
I agree with, yeah. I agree with Professor Van der Pijl that it's going to be a kangaroo trial. So it seems that, you know, they're so eager to convict somebody. It's not about what really happened. It's about convicting somebody, getting compensations, and forget about the whole thing. And then, I don't know, 20 years later, 50, you know, maybe in our lifetime, if we're lucky, we really learn what really happened.
No, I was just thinking of what Napoleon said. It's just a footnote. Napoleon said, you don't have to conceal the truth, you just have to wait. You know, and that is what happens in 9/11, in the Kennedy assassination. You name all these cases, MH17 is the same. You just wait, and at some point people will not even know any longer what we're talking about when you use these terms. Sorry.
Thank you. We have 2 questions here.
There was also a Dutch lawyer in the movie. He was making a case for MH17 against the government. A Dutch lawyer. And I do not really understand why you put him in your documentary. And can you give some background story on that specific?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know that we put it very shortly because we didn't have, you know, video. You saw that it was like, you know, filmed with a cell phone secretly because we were not expecting when we came to that meeting. We were expecting to see, of course, you know, the lawyer, but instead there were these 2 strange people that introduced themselves as his friend, but you can tell that they were not his friends. I cannot say for sure, 100%, that they were Dutch Secret Service. Well, it is Secret Service, so I cannot say for sure, you know, it's secret, so of course they don't openly say it like this, but it looked like it. It was quite an empty apartment, and these people were pressuring us that it's in our best interest not to give the first interview that we took of Mr. van der Hoen, where he said that he was pushing for independent investigation. He was pushing for UN investigation. He was, I don't know about now because we lost contact. He doesn't, you know, communicate. He doesn't answer phone or emails. He represented some of the families on the initial, you know, stage, and he's a very nice man and a very brave one. And he said, I'm not afraid of anyone. It's in the documentary. That's what he told us in the first interview. I'm pushing for independent investigation because the Dutch are too slow. The debris at that time were still lying at the crash site. And then he told me that he was being pressured about this thing. And I asked him for a comment. I asked him if he could make this comment on camera, saying who, why would they pressure you, what's wrong with the situation. He agreed initially, but then when we came for the interview, there was no lawyer, there were these two men. So, is that clear? Okay.
Next question. I would like to put something in memory, because it's a bit...
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Maybe it doesn't work, but I would like to put something in memory, because it's a bit curious.
Keep it closer, please.
A bit curious question from the journalists from the NRC, why there are no members of the parliament, but it's because of the NRC that there is no member of the parliament, because they made Pieter Omtzigt, we say in Dutch, monddood. So maybe they're looking who's the next one to...
Next victim. Next victim.
Next victim.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, that's an important point, because there was one member of parliament of the Christian Democratic Party, Pieter Omtzigt, and he's no radical in any sense, I can assure you. But he was just keeping the government on its toes on this matter. So he asked the questions that you should ask as a proper parliamentarian. And at some point, the NRC Handelsblad, again, the newspaper of record, decided to smear him about something that was so completely trivial that I don't want to repeat it here. And he was taken off this portfolio, and now he's handling other matters. And I guess that since the NRC was so crucial in ending the career of Pieter Omtzigt as a critic of the government on the issue of MH17, that they want to make sure that not a new Pieter Omtzigt suddenly turns up here and has the, well, courage of looking at a documentary which he is not supposed, or she is not supposed to see. That may be the background, but that's speculation.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have a kind of, institutional question. Up till now, no judge has given a judgment, so there will be suspects. I don't know whether the suspects will appear before a court or what. My question is, if that will be the case, that there is an international court dealing with this case, and there are not suspects coming. What are the ways you have to present all your evidence to the defense of suspects in their absence? Do you follow it? Who is going to take on the defense? Who are these people, and do you have communication already with the defense? Because otherwise, I feel like in this room you do as if the press is telling what is true or not. This will finally, at least theoretically, a judge, a court. And I also did not follow, it's my own fault, whether all the main states involved recognize this court that is going to give the final judgment. So, two questions. Do you have a strategy how to address your evidence to the defense? And secondly, that is just for my information, do all the states involved recognize this court that has been staged so far?
Well, in this case, you have to realize that it's not an international court. It's a Dutch court here in The Hague, and the 3 judges have already been designated. But they, of course, are basing their judgment on the basis of an international prosecution, and that's a JIT. It's interesting to know that one of the judges actually was an intern in the Yugoslavia tribunal. So there's a direct connection to these. I mean, that in itself doesn't mean so much, but it reminds you of the fact that it is important to look again at the Yugoslavia tribunal, in which Milosevic, the president of Yugoslavia, died in his cell the day after the main accusation against him was dropped on the basis of lack of evidence. And there are, in the Rwanda case and other cases, there are also many issues that make you very distrustful about these international trials. In this case, the dossier that we are preparing with Max van der Werf and Hector Reban, once it will be in a presentable form, but that requires a lot of work, we will approach the judges and ask for an opportunity to present the materials to them and to see if anyone can get the status of a witness à décharge, you know, to exculpate the people who are indicted. But the choice of the people who are now accused of murder is already so absurd that if we would be looking at a proper court of justice, anyone with any sense of what valid proof is, or what fairness is in justice, would reject the case out of hand. That is what I think of the current state of the preparations of the MH17 trial. But just as the media and parliamentarians are under extreme pressure when it comes to the issue of MH17, I am afraid that judges too, who are of course not exempt from social influences, will be under extreme pressure to come up with the conviction. And again, if you look at Yugoslavia, Rwanda, the ICC about Africa, and the Lockerbie case, which is also a very dramatic miscarriage of justice, when you look at all these matters, you will see that a verdict against Russians and pro-Russian Ukrainians will just stick in people's minds, and they will always remember, aha, that was what happened on MH17. So that's the function also of the lawsuit.
Second, just a second.
I'm just asking this because I'm not so sure whether you will have a place in this procedure, being not a direct victim.
No, you're entirely right. And that brings me to another issue. There is a project in the Netherlands which is called the ICCT, and it's a series of seminars which discusses how you can use cases of law as political theater. You wouldn't believe it if I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't read it myself. It's being organized by a professor from, I think, Utrecht, Beatrice de Graaf, who's very popular in official circles and has her own column in the NRC, of course, where else? And she organizes these things, and she says a trial, when it deals with terrorist or violent matters, is not a matter of justice, it's a matter of political theater and emotions. And you see that coming back in the case of the MH17 trial, because although there's very little evidence, the defendants will not turn up. They would be very stupid to do so. But the people who will turn up are the bereaved, you know, the family members. And these family members have been manipulated left and right during the whole process, the last 5 years, and they will be given a voice at the trial, as if the voice of a person who has suffered this terrible loss and is carrying this terrible grief carries the weight of a witness or something. It's pure emotion, and people will all be moved to tears and to see what is going on, and then the verdict will be made that it was, I guess, Putin, Russia, you name it. You know, that's the danger. But you're right that an outsider has no place.
Present this to these victims?
Not yet. No. They are completely closed off from any communication.
Well, we have invited the stichting, the official stichting of the next of kin, members of the families of the victims as well, but they answered that they won't come today. So everyone is invited. Once again, there are no exclusions. Everyone is welcome. And it's the choice, people will come or not. It's their own choice. Any more questions?
I've a question for Jana. Did you hear many people who talked about book plumes, about clouds from a bug missile launch? Because on the internet I saw a lot of people talking about fighter planes flying by, and such a bug launch should be witnessed by tens of thousands of people because it's so obvious, because the clouds stay in the air for 1 or 2 minutes, and you talk to the most people. Do you have a feeling that there was a book launch?
Well, I don't want to, again, speculate. No feelings, okay? Just pure facts. We did go to different places. We were not able to find witnesses of a book missile launch. We went to Zaroshinsk as well. What Russia says, that there was a Ukrainian book launch or something. We didn't find any witnesses there as well. Right. We followed BBC's steps because they were able to find this witness, Valentina Kovalenko. You saw her in the documentary. She told us a totally different story. And I'm still not sure what it was that she's talking about. If it was a missile, or maybe it was what she saw, it was because of the fire, it was maybe the back of the fighter jet that she saw, but you know, she didn't realize it. I don't know, but she pointed at a different direction totally. She didn't see any plume smoke. No, right. It looks very strange that if there was something 2 kilometers from her happening, not hearing it or seeing anything, that really looks strange, but you know, that's the only witness I can, relate to. So, but that's the thing. That's why I was really hoping to talk to people who were on Saur Magila that day. Exactly. Because they should definitely see something. Moreover, we have one picture that was made by a fighter. He's not alive anymore. That shows that place at around that time. Yes. Just a little bit, a few minutes later, when after the crash, there is no plume smoke. Right. Again, it does not 100% proves that there was no plume smoke. No, that's why we needed to talk to him, because you need to have precise time. Because this picture was taken like a few minutes after the crash, so maybe, you know, the plume smoke disappeared by that time or whatever. You see, you have to be very precise with things like that. Unfortunately, we don't have enough evidence to say that, you know, what really, if there was any book missile launch, or, you know, where, whatever, we were not able to find witnesses like that.
No, because statistically, I'm not very impressed by 1 or 2 persons who have seen a bug launch, because 10,000s of people should see that, because it's so big, and the clouds that stay in the sky for a minute.
Well, yeah, experts say that it really does make a really big sound that's impossible not to hear, even like the earth is shaking and stuff. I wouldn't be so sure about the plume, you know, how long it stays, because it really depends on weather conditions and everything. Again, we don't know where this launch site was. Maybe it was in some place where, I don't know, there are no close by villages or whatever. So there might be a launch. We just don't know, you know, where it was and who launched it, if there was a launch.
Still, I think when you see the condensation of a bug launch, there are many tests and many exercises done with these rockets. In general, you can say you see for 1 minute a lot of clouds from condensation in the air where the rocket went. So I would say that maybe half of the population of Torres, the biggest town in the neighborhood, would maybe have seen this cloud when there was.
Well,
such a
there are
run.
two pictures of a plume smoke. One made by Ukrainian photographer Aleynikov. Max, my investigative partner, is sure that they're fake. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they're fake. I'm not an expert.
No.
But the only thing that I know is that the story of this photographer is absolutely inaccurate. I was in his apartment. I examined his flat, and his story doesn't match, the reality of his apartment. So I don't know why would he lie. Again, it doesn't mean that the picture is fake, I don't know. But again, it makes me wonder. So there is nothing, what I'm saying is, what we put in the documentary is something factual and evidential. If there is something we're not sure about, it's not in the documentary. I don't know if this picture is fake or not. But probably it is strange that there's only, two pictures that are very of doubtful quality, so to say.
Exactly.
And Bellingcat says they have raw data of this, of those photographs. Why wouldn't they put in the open space those raw pictures for anyone to analyze, and then we shut up and say, oh yeah, you're right, sorry.
Yeah, it's funny, Bellingcat.
It never happens, you see? So,
it was the photograph is the plume against a clear blue sky, and you can go back to the weather report for that day, and you can see that it was cloudy, especially in that direction. So that's one thing. But in Berlin, I also met Colonel Biedermann, who is a former officer of the East German air defense forces, and he trained people in firing bugs. And he and also Romanian officers and other people from the Warsaw Pact countries all said the same, and that is that if a large object like a Boeing 777 is hit by, well, it's not literally hit, but attacked by a bug missile, it explodes in the air because it's full of wires and full of tubes with kerosene in it. And the idea that a plane comes down with large parts unaffected by fire means that it has been brought down by a different method. That's what these military specialists say. I'm not a specialist in this matter. So I think it's fake.
but one fact we know for sure, that there were Ukrainian fighter jets that day in the skies.
I still think that a bomb explosion aboard would still be possible also.
Seriously, I don't want to speculate. I have no evidence of that.
No.
And you have to understand, we have very little information. All we, like JIT has so much more resources,
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they have so much more, they have all the information they need. The way they did the expertise, I think Billy Six's question was brilliant about expertising the magnetic elements, in the metal, in the holes, which JIT couldn't answer. That's mind-blowing, So it is possible to know the whole picture, exact picture. You see, and the situation is that journalists are getting attacked, and asked for, like, what do you think? Do you think happened? Why is this? Why is that? And we possess, like, I don't know, such little information, and we try to, dig at least, something, some facts, not speculations, because 9% of the information in the media, mostly speculations. Any media, Russian media, Dutch media, Ukrainian media, speculations. And it's not our job as journalists, it's job of experts, of official investigation to tell us the truth. We don't have to dig day and night for this information, which is so intransparent. And that's the main idea, you know? And what the whole thing they're doing, they're pushing people against each other, you know? Their main narrative is Russia, aggressor, Russia did it, it was Russian-made missile. You see the forming of the words, Russian-made missile. You know how many Russian-made missile in the world? And, you know, but anyways, I'm not an apologist for Russia. If Russia did it, prove it. Convince me. I'm not convinced. It's not because, you know, I'm a Russian citizen.
The fact that the JIT relies on Bellingcat, an amateur collective from Britain, whereas they could rely on the 17 American intelligence services that together have a budget as large as the entire Russian defense budget. They have the intelligence services of all the other countries. So if they rely on an internet collective from Britain, which is private, although very well paid, certainly here in the Netherlands, it's a sign of immense poverty and incapacity. It basically means that you're not interested in the data. The United States had satellites over the area of the conflict permanently. They would be able to show us, and we would be seeing it every day if there was proof on film of Russian activity or rebel activity. The fact that we don't see that is in itself, if you ask me, enough to know that since we don't see it, it doesn't exist.
Question here.
In the documentary, you show a few people who talk about what they have seen, and then they say, or you say it's like 2 days before. So this is a part in documentary that I find messy, confusing, because I don't know if they talk about that day or 2 days before, and no, I'm an expert, so blah, blah, blah. And there's other moment with Mr. Van de Hoen you want to talk to, and then other guys are in his apartment. It is for an outsider difficult to follow. Okay. So I thought if we all collect some money, can you enlarge the documentary and make all these things more clear? Also the BBC documentary. The BBC documentary you showed to the lady in the village, that she says, yeah, but that's not here, you know, it's not our church. It would be good to see the parts of the documentary, you know, to enlarge this piece so it's really clear what she's watching, and then it becomes clear that what is the lie. These are things that are a bit vague, a bit messy in the documentary. So I really hope you could enlarge it, and it could be 3 times as large, not this documentary. So what has stopped you? Is that the money, or
and time also? We had very limited time producing it, and yeah, you're right.
Do you think of enlarging it, adding some?
Well, of course, our job is not done here. Definitely. I mean, you can see the ending. It's, you know, it prompts the continuation because there is a lot to investigate. We have quite a few ideas how to prove other things. Like, we're almost sure that this video is that GIT uses as an evidence is also fake. We have some ideas how to prove it, but you see, you need evidence to prove it. We cannot just say, oh, we know, we're sure, you know. We have to, and you have to understand also it's a documentary. It should be visualized, and it takes, of course, you know, time. Unfortunately, we had very little time in Donbass this time. We have ideas how to go in and investigate more, but documentary is a very expensive and time-consuming process. At some point, we could make another documentary, of course, but again, we need to collect money, blah, 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 and I wouldn't say that we were successful this time with crowdfunding. Again, probably because we had very little time. Our crowdfunding project was only for 3 weeks. We collected only 23,000 euro, but not all of this money was we could use. I'm just giving you a little bit of our inner kitchen. The thing with crowdfunding platforms is that you give a sum you want to collect. We put 20,000 euro. This is like 4th part of the budget. But we thought, okay, we start with this, we start filming, and then we have another crowdfunding, blah, blah, blah. We were very optimistic. The thing is, if you don't collect exactly 20,000 euro in time, you don't get any money. That's a weird system. So the time was approaching, the deadline was approaching, and we didn't collect this 20,000. So Max borrowed some money from his friends who put some money on this platform so that we could at least, you know, get the money that people donated. So from crowdfunding, we got only 13,000 euro, I think, which is like very little for a budget of a documentary. The rest money, as crazy as it might sound, came from me personally. Because I was hoping that this is an important enough topic, and if we make a really serious, good, factual documentary, many channels would be interested in buying it. None of them did. Not in Russia as well. So, yeah. So to answer your question, I mean, I'm now like down in money and thinking about next documentary. As much as I want to do it, I'm not sure I can afford it. I'm sorry.
It's a pity. Any millionaire in the audience, step forward.
There's a question
Can
there.
I ask you another
Yeah?
question?
Yeah.
I got the mic. Yeah? Okay. I just want to clarify a little thing. In the time of the shooting down of MH17, I was checking Wikipedia on the fighter jets of the Ukrainian army. And at the time I was checking it, it was said that the Sukhovs, I don't know which type, had a maximum height of 7 kilometers they could ascend. But for a short period of time, they could go higher. And then when I checked 1 year later, that information has changed. And when I got into a debate with somebody about the fighter jets, they said that the fighter jets can't get higher than 7 kilometers, that Russia changed that on Wikipedia so they could go higher than 7, they could go temporarily to 10 kilometers. And that was changed back later to 7. Do you have any information how high they can fly and if they can actually shoot down MH17, if they're capable of that?
I'm not going to talk about if it did or did not shoot MH17 because it's going to be a speculation. We don't have enough evidence. I just know the fact of presence of these fighter jets. But if you would have watched my second documentary on MH17, we made an experiment. We made Su-25 fly, and it flew 11,000 meters, and it was freely maneuvering on that height. I can explain to you why they put, I mean, I don't know what happened to Wikipedia. I cannot answer for that. Anyways, even if it happened, I'm telling you, the way Russia deals with information war, it's unexplainable. I don't know. If they did it, I don't know why they would do it. And anyways, Wikipedia, I mean, anyone can go there and change anything, so, right? But
I have another question.
When an airplane is published with a given service ceiling, that service ceiling is put with all the weaponry under the wings, everything fully loaded at the maximum takeoff weight. If you load it lightly, it goes faster and higher. It's very, very simple, this.
yeah,
It's a matter of physics.
But why they put this low height as 7,000 meters? Because exactly Su-25 does not have a protected cabin. So Pressure, yeah.
Pressurized
Yeah,
cabin.
pressurized cabin. That's why. The rest of SU, like 29, etc., they do have pressurized cabin. That's why they, like in the manual, their limit, you know, they can fly
But
higher than...
from 12,000
but
feet, every
it's
pilot...
not a problem for SU-25 to fly 10,000 meters and high with equipment. And I talked to experts who gave me examples. The fighter jets, like for example in Afghanistan, Su-25, they flew and they avoided mountains. They had to go up higher, even higher than,
But they have oxygen masks, and they can go very high with them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Su-25, for Su-25, absolutely possible to go higher. But in the manual, like in the characteristics, it put the limit to 7,000 only because of this cabin and unpressurized cabin thing.
As far as I
That's
understand,
the only reason.
As far as I understand, this performance limit is given by the maximum takeoff weight, which is not always the case when a mission is projected.
Okay, and another thing is, I don't know why this discussion. I mean, I did this experiment in my second documentary only because so many people were talking about this and putting it this way, but it does not matter at what height the fighter jet was flying. To hit a plane, if we're talking about hitting a plane and launching an air-to-air missile, fighter jet does not have to be the same height as a civil plane. So really, the ground for this discussion, it's kind of pointless. It doesn't prove anything.
Okay, just one more. I'm just curious, yeah? When the bodies were found on the ground, some of the people had their masks on that dropped down from the luggage compartments. When the airplane MH17 got decompressed, yeah, the mask come down and the people had this mask on their face. Do you have time to put this mask on your face when you get shot by a bug missile, when you are exploding, or has it proof that the descent of the airplane went slow, that people have time to put on a mask?
Again, a speculation, of course. We don't know what happens when something like this happen, you know, all kind of things flying around. We don't know how this mask ended up on a person. I don't know how many masks were on people, so it's not enough base to, you know, to put it as an evidence that people still had some time to put the masks on. But we recovered an oxygen generator that was activated. And this is a very interesting detail. Again, it's on our part, it's a research in progress. I'm not implying anything, but for me, it is an interesting detail. But we need to talk to producers of Boeing for that, to understand for this oxygen generator, and it's a chemical, you know, it's like, it's a chemical, I don't know, thing. Does it activate when a person actually pulls the mask, or it activates automatically? Then maybe you have a ground for some further consideration and investigation. We wrote to Boeing, we never get an answer. So that's all I can tell you. But for me, it is an interesting detail. And another thing is, again, I don't know how important it is, if it means really anything, and there is a picture of the board, dashboard, and you see it indicates that fasten the seatbelt sign was turned on manually. It was not automatically turned on. It was turned on manually by a pilot. Again, it might not mean anything, but we need, you know, more research on that. But these two things are also interesting, I think, for for investigating. Yeah.
It also reminds us of the terrible human tragedy that we're talking about, you know, because these details about how people's lives ended is actually what should concern us most. And I think that all the people that I have met who are investigating this matter, other than the JIT and the official investigation, are motivated by the idea that here a terrible tragedy happened to people who are now being manipulated in many ways, but whom we would have to see as the weakest party in the whole situation. And I think it's our duty, yours and mine and Jana's and whoever is involved in this matter, to fight for these people, even if they're not themselves at this moment interested or allowed to be part of the process, but to fight for for these people to get the true story out, because that is what we are talking about.
Thank you. We have a question here. Jana?
Yes. There's a lot of speculation about what happened. I have a question about more involving who. I didn't see the movie. I was too late. Sorry, but I think I've heard anyway. Everybody asked their questions.
Can you speak up, please?
Oh,
a little bit, thank you.
I've heard everybody ask their questions, but one main name I really missed in these questions that are asked, and I'm not sure if you are aware, but there was supposed evidence on Kolomoisky and Valerie Gialetti. I think that's how you pronounce it. Being involved in downing the MH17 through an intercepted personal correspondence by a Ukrainian hacker group called Kiber Berkut. You were aware of this?
Well, I heard the story, but again, we're speculating here.
You only heard the
it's
story?
It's a pity you haven't seen the documentary. What?
Yeah, did you also see the documents, or you just heard the story about it?
Oh, no documents. You have documents proving it?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have. And I have some more incriminating documents that point in his direction. So maybe that could be interesting to involve in the documentary.
Okay, where did you get those documents? What kind of documents they are?
Well, they were hacked and thrown on internet for a short while, and I happened to come across them. And
have you proved their authenticity?
Well, you'll have to decide that for yourself.
Yeah, sure. I would. Okay, yeah, sure. Pass them on to me.
Okay.
So you're saying
later.
It was Kolomoisky who ordered to deliberately to shoot down MH17?
And you look at the conversations, it seems very, very genuine. It's not something you make up. It's very.
You look at them or you listen to them?
Well, there were audios that I know of, but I don't have those anymore. Well, they got lost. It sounds stupid, I know, but they did get lost. But I had some backups from the documents, and that is a writing down from the audios, and that's a transcript. So.
Okay.
But if so, well, maybe that could help the investigation to look in the right direction, maybe.
Of course, I mean, we welcome any kind of evidence, but of course we have to check them for authenticity, because there's so much going on in the internet, and so I don't trust open source information. I'm sorry, for me it's something, unless you know.
It's always hard to find incriminating evidence afterwards. You know, it's everything. That's why there's so much speculation. But I am pretty amazed that there's. I stumbled upon this like 3 or 4 years ago, and assumed it would be picked up by investigators, and it would find its way. But maybe I am onto something then, or it's nothing. But I thought it was, worth a while to just.
I'd
bring this
really
up.
prefer a different way of things. I would really wish that GIT would make my job easier. I would just go rest, and they will really do the job and make it transparent for us, that I don't have, to go through so much trouble to dig, the small pieces of truth.
Yeah, but I
seriously.
think,
So for
yeah.
me,
To
I
be
mean,
realistic, that's just wishful thinking, I guess.
that is, but I don't know. I mean, maybe things can change if people change, if they, stop letting politicians manipulate their minds.
Oh yeah.
There's so many of us,
Yeah, well.
and not very many of them, but still,
Yeah, it's
they're
true.
saying their word.
That's true. That's true.
So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, the question there.
I have a question, just very short one. I saw a guy in your documentary speaking about the air-to-air missile. I'm a Russian and I'm a military interpreter, so I know the difference between missile and raketa. How many witnesses, which you have spoken to, mentioned exactly the surface-to-air missile, which could be Buk, or anyway, in Russian it's Zenitny complex, as contrary to what the guy said, it could be launched from a plane, which is a totally different name in Russian. Did any one of your witnesses mention the surface-to-air missile?
What do you mean, totally different name? Ракета? Воздух, воздух, земля, воздух.
Да, но зенитная, кто-то. Did anyone say surface-to-air missile of your witnesses?
No.
Just.
No, not that I remember. Well, except for this lady in our documentary.
Okay, but did anyone mention Buk? Where does Buk come from? What do we have an evidence for Buk? As I understand, this is the bow tie elements. This is the movie made by Bellingcat. This is the Venturi. And are there any witnesses speaking about Buk in general? On the JIT side, on your side, did you hear of anyone mentioning Buk as a witness? I have seen the launch of surface-to-air missile.
No, launching of missile, no.
That's my question. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry, but we have to stop. I would like to ask
just
the
last
question.
I want to thank you for this documentary. I find it very, very upsetting. And I'm wondering, does it also upset you? Does it cause you stress? How do you sleep at night? Because especially when you're talking about the Ukrainian, the SBU and the torturing of people, how do you deal with that personally?
I didn't really understand what your question is about.
How are you affected emotionally?
I don't take it personally in terms of I'm not thinking 24/7 about SBU and being on Meritvort site or anything like that. I don't know, it just doesn't get to me. More upsetting to me is what's going on with the investigation. And personally, I don't have a right to judge anybody or to moralize. But personally, for me, the most upsetting thing is how next of kin, the relatives of the people of the deceased are being influenced. That is very upsetting. And this time it was an eye-opener for me when I was in Malaysia. I found out that Dutch embassy is staying in close contact with Malaysian relatives, and they influence them, they feed them information that fits their narrative, of course. And that was very upsetting to me, because these people, they're very aggressive against something that they don't even know if it's true or not. They just, and I think, if you ask me, maybe it's too big of a word, but I think it's crime to treat these people like that. I mean, you and me, luckily we didn't lose anyone in this tragedy. But someone who lost some loved one in this tragedy and being manipulated like that. And these people, I mean, you ask me if I take it personally. I don't take it personally. You know how these people, they hate me. I know. I heard this person, not knowing that I hear this person. It's one of the relatives of, you know, the MH17 victim, talking really bad things about me, for making a documentary, for trying to get, you know, I'm not, you know, I'm not self-righteous. I'm not telling people what to believe. But I want people to think a little bit, to analyze. I am doing your work, no matter what labels they put on me, because I don't think that where I used to work defines me. My work defines me. And I would say that I'm a passionate person about things. We talked with Max about this, with the second person in the, my investigative partner. He's more about technical things. And I tell him, it's always about people. It is about people. We forget about this. There are some obvious things, only, I don't know, a blind person cannot, you know, not see that it's so political, that there's so little truth about this. But, okay, whatever, but influencing relatives in this manner, I think it's unforgivable. I'm sorry, maybe it's emotional, but I just realized that one day these people, when they learn the truth, they will be so disappointed. I don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to go to a bar and then we can talk with each other in another situation. And yeah, welcome. Okay, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you very much. Лен, ну как? Да? Нормально прошло? Да, ничего такого не это самое. Но вообще, видимо, никого не было, кто